yeah, I will try to give you a short, yeah, maybe a different perspective on, and I try to be a bit more positive and hands-on. Let's see if that works out in the end. Let me just, can you now see it on the whole screen?
Yes, we can see it perfectly. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, as I said, I'm very happy to be here today. I've been working in EU-funded cultural projects quite a lot because I've been working for Creative Europe. And now that I'm working more focused on sustainability aspects, it's very nice to be here today to connect both of these passions. What you can expect today is that I will try to break down a very complicated and frustrating topic into 3 numbers. So you can maybe have those in mind, 1, 2, and 3, which is quite easy. So even in the early morning today, with a cup of coffee, that should be manageable. We have some time in the end for some questions. However, whenever there's something that you want to know, or if I'm talking too quickly, just let me know. Yeah, because I tend to rush through this, and maybe that's sometimes not very helpful to get it. So please just interrupt me at any time. I've also prepared something for a small little warm-up, which is a small climate quiz, just to see if there is, yeah, just to have a little warm-up. I would propose, I have 3 questions prepared, and I always provide 2 options, and you can just write into the chat which option you think is the one that is correct. So let's just start with the first question, which is, how climate damaging do you think is sending an email? So climate damaging in terms of how many carbon dioxide emissions does sending an email have? Is it as much as a plastic bag or the production of a plastic bag, or as much as a coffee to-go cup? Please just type in A or B. And most of you are guessing it's B. It's actually not that dramatic. So it's 10 grams of carbon dioxide that is produced by 1 email. However, just an email without an annex. And that is as much as a plastic bag. As soon as you add an annex to the email, it easily doubles. And so you can always think about it when sending very small emails, that just saying thank you if someone provided you useful information is, of course, very polite. But if you start thinking about bigger companies and their email traffic, you can already imagine that there is not only waste, but also digital waste that has an impact. So, yeah. So here's question 2. Oh, that's question 3. So question 2 is something that's maybe more related to you working in theater, which is about your clothing, which can also be part of the costumes you use in the theater. So if you want to save your emissions or reduce your emissions when it comes to your clothing, what do you think has the biggest potential in reducing emissions? Is it buying secondhand, or is it if you don't use the tumbler and air dry all of your clothes? Yeah, I can see most of you so far have guessed A, and that's actually correct. If you look at 1 piece of cloth, you can save 263 kilograms of carbon dioxide per piece of cloth if you buy it secondhand. And however, if you air dry it, you also save 223 kilograms. So it's actually very close by, and there are further options, for example, not ironing your clothes or not using lots of chemicals, and that has a lot less impact. So not ironing is only saving you 10 kilogram emissions per piece of cloth. So just for you to get an idea that there are several options that you can use privately or also maybe in your theater. The next question is not related to theater, but rather to museums and focusing on Germany. So the question is, how much waste do you think is produced by special exhibitions in German museums per year? Is it 20,000 tons of waste or is it 40,000 tons of waste? What do you think? Yeah, I see you're always opting for the more dramatic option. In this case, it's actually answer A, which is still a lot, but maybe not as much as expected. It's from 2019, so it can also have changed, but there is a study that says that per special exhibition, it's 5 tons of waste that is produced. Of course, that's an average and depends always on the size of your museums. But yeah, thanks for participating. Just as a small warm-up and just to show you that there are so many different areas in our private life and in our professional life that are actually intertwined, and that are areas where we can actually do something, and that some things are very small, like thinking about our emails, and that others are rather big, and that's actually something I will relate to further on. But now I'd actually want to start with my input, which is not as much talking about the IPCC itself, but rather talking to you about things that what does that actually mean for you working in small cultural organizations in theaters? Because as you've all said in the beginning, it is urgent, we have to do something now, but it's also quite complicated because it's very difficult to find your focus. So if we look at the topic of ecological transition, there are, and connected with the work in cultural organizations, there are different fields of action that you can look at. And it's quite a lot, actually. You can see some of them here. So it also depends on what kind of cultural organizations you are, how you're working, and what size you have. But it depends from the field of energy or from the buildings and infrastructure. If now, for example, in the Consol Teatro, you're getting a new heating, but you also have the field of your stage design, of your green IT, or not so green IT, who knows, but also the costumes you produce, the mobility you use to get your stuff, but also the mobility you use to get to the theater, the public transport. So you see there's a variety of fields of action where ecological transition can take place. And whenever you look at this, it rather seems probably to you as a wall, and it leaves you behind with, oh my God, there's a lot to do. Where can we start? And that's something I want to help you with. So if you remember, in the beginning, I was talking about 1, 2, 3. If you want to get started in your theaters to take action for ecological transition, you first need a decision. And luckily, I have the impression you've already all taken your decision because you want to commit to ecological transition. You're part of this project, you are talking about it, you're learning about it. And that is the first important step, to say, yes, we will do something, we need to do something, so let's get started. So that's the groundwork, and it's very good to see that you've already committed to this goal, because there's a lot of people, especially in the cultural sector, that haven't realized that they can actually do something and don't know how to get started. So the idea of, yes, we will do something is the perfect starting point. And from there's two perspectives on the topic that I want to highlight, because what the impression I got this morning, and it's a very usual impression, is that talking about the IPCC or about the Paris goals, about the SDGs or the European Bauhaus, whatever kind of political agenda you have, it leaves most of the people frustrated, not knowing what to do, and just with the impression of we have to reduce, we have to change our behavior, and rather from a negative point of view. And this negative point of view is also connected to the very widespread approach of the footprint, the carbon footprint, which is one perspective on looking on our human behavior and what kind of damage we are doing to the planet with our behavior. So it focuses on carbon dioxide. It focuses on measuring what we do and what kind of damage we do to our Earth. And it's not actually what we do, but it's just the point that we actually damage it, and that is highlighted by the amount of carbon dioxide that our behavior causes. So the footprint's main goal is to let us know that our behavior is very bad and that we have to reduce the negative effects of what we are doing. So it always looks at it from a rather negative point of view, telling us what you're doing is bad, reduce whatever you're doing, you still need to do a lot, and then it leaves us alone. And very often that leads to us not doing anything just because we don't know what to do and because we are rather angry or scared or frustrated with this kind of perspective. And in order to rather take a more positive and proactive approach to ecological transition, there's also a different perspective, and that is especially relevant for cultural organizations. That is the so-called handprint. And the handprint rather looks at our behavior from a different point of view, because it looks at it from the point of view, what have we already done? What is there, what already works well in terms of ecological transition? So in terms of, it doesn't only look at it from the point of view of carbon dioxide, but it also looks at other dimensions of sustainability. So also on social aspects, on economic aspects, on cultural aspects. So it takes a rather broad view, and it tries to provide a more positive narrative on the topic and says, well, we have the power to change something. We've already changed something. So maybe just see if we can use that and do even more with it and talk about whatever practice already worked for us. And that's also why these kind of projects where you come together, where you learn from each other, is super important in order to increase this so-called handprint, because the special thing in the cultural sector is that the power of culture and the arts is that we can do both, because we can, on the first step, we can work on our organization and try to reduce the emissions we cause in our theater or museum or whatsoever. But especially in the cultural sector, we can actually have a huge handprint. We have the power to increase awareness, to tell people about it in a rather creative and artistic view, and to be a role model and to talk to our audience, to the society. And that is something that is a lot more than just reducing the emissions, especially as you've also highlighted in the IPCC video, that the communication about the climate crisis is complicated and is frustrating. And that's where theaters and cultural professionals can come in and actually do have a lot to say and can use their power in doing so. So that is very often not seen as something very valuable, because you cannot measure it in numbers. Of course, it's a lot more attractive that the emissions are measurable in numbers, and then you can directly see, I have now have a new heating, so now I'm reducing my consumptions, and I can see that in my emissions, and that's great. And of course, that's a lot easier in that sense. However, the other things are very visible and can create a very important impact to inspire people to act on their own. So I'd like to encourage you to always take these two perspectives, because that's also very important for yourself to feel that your cultural and artistic work is very valuable in that regard, even though it might not automatically reduce your carbon footprint. That's 1 and 2. So now, starting from there are 3 steps to get started. And I know this is very much broken down, whatever companies try to do when they develop a strategy for sustainable transition. So now I've tried to break it down and to make it as easy as possible. Maybe now it might also seem very simple to you, but I hope it can still help you to find your way through it. So it is basically 3 steps. It's define where you're standing, it's setting priorities, and then that leads you to actually taking actions. And of course, this is only a proposal, but it makes it easier for you also in terms of maybe planning what to do next, and also maybe to get some funding for this. So first of all, you need to know, where are you now? What do you already know? You've started talking about the different political agendas. That's important to know what the goals are, what you might be doing. Then it's very important to see, what are you actually consuming in your theater? Like, how much waste do you produce? How much energy do you need? How many costumes or materials do you use for one production? So it is very helpful to collect data. Of course, the most suitable way is to measure your carbon footprint, if that's possible. However, there are some freewares that are existing online. However, it is also just a starting point to look at your consumptions and to get an idea on where you're standing, so that later on you can see if something in your numbers has actually changed, and if the measures you've taken are actually effective. So it's rather for you to have some kind of self-evaluation on the go. So when you've defined your status quo, you have to set priorities. So in the beginning, I've shown you this map of different fields of actions, and you cannot change everything at once. So pick a priority, set your focus on 1, 2, whatsoever, on several areas where you want to take action first. I've now highlighted the field of communication and marketing, which is very often something that's not related to ecological transition, even though it's quite important. Just for now, just to give you an example on how to go through the process. So I've come up with some questions that might help you to find your focus. So maybe you sit together with your team and you discuss about what can you actually do? Like, what are fields of actions where you actually are independent, where you have the responsibility to change something, and where can you actually do it without the help of others, without financial resources or other human resources? So pick the so-called low-hanging fruits. What's easy for you to do? Where can you have a quick success also to empower yourself? Then also look at, what do you actually want to do? What are the fields of actions that are fun? Where can you be creative? Where are you motivated? Very often the topic of ecological sustainability is related to our intrinsic motivation. So talk to your team and see, okay, what are areas where we actually want to work in this context? And then also look at it from a rather opportunistic point of view, maybe. So what do you have to do anyway? So changing the heating system, to use that example again, is something that from time to time, it is not only because of the climate change, but there's also the building that has to be renovated. So sometimes just look at it, okay, what are points on our to-do list anyway, and can somehow relate them to the topic of the climate? Or is there maybe a call for proposal that comes in handy, and should we propose something? And that's why we set this priority on that topic. So these are some questions that might help you find your focus, set priorities, so that you know we will first start with communication or energy or whatsoever you go for. And coming from that, the most creative and most fun part of it all starts, in my opinion at least, and that's where you can get inspired, where you can develop ideas and measures on what you can actually do. So you pick your field of action, for today, communication. You sit together with your team, you look at other theaters or cultural organizations, you talk to your partners here in the project, and you come up, I'm sure you will come up with tons of ideas that you could change. From we will recycle our stage scenery to we will provide every guest that comes with public transport with one drink for free. There are lots of options that you can come up with. And the first point is just collect the options without evaluating them. Just be creative, be open-minded and think about ideas. What would you want to do in your theater, and make a list of those ideas. And then what usually happens is that you have a huge wall of post-its of ideas, or maybe also a digital document where you have a long list and catalog of ideas. I've just come up with some here just to try to show you what I'm talking about. So if you think about communication and marketing in your theater, you could come up with, well, maybe we stop printing our tickets and we use e-ticketing. Maybe we can tell our audience on our website that we're actually thinking about ecological aspects and that we are trying to incorporate them in our theater, also to raise awareness on that point of view. Or maybe you can also inform your audience about public transport on your website, because very often when you have the information on how to get to the theater, there's always on top of it the car. How can you get to the theater by car? And then you have the public transport, and then you have the bike. You can already turn it around and make it more easy to find the right information. So maybe these things seem simple to you, but all of these ideas are ideas that help you move forward to become more sustainable in ecological terms. Also, you can talk about guidelines on how to save energy in your theater, either internally with your team members, but also you can, for example, hang a poster in the bathroom for the audience to tell them, please always turn off the light whenever you leave the bathroom. So it's it's a lot of small aspects. And also what you can see here is that they are always intertwined with other fields of action, so relating to energy or mobility. So it's also sometimes difficult to draw a line, but that's also something which is very positive, that everything is somehow related to each other. So if you, at the end, you've come up with a long list and you have, following this example, you have a long list of measures, then do you think what you want to do? Do you have a clue on what to do next? I assume you are motivated then, but you still don't know where to get started. So what you need to do is evaluate your ideas. And sometimes that can be quite complicated because you lack the proper knowledge. You don't know, is that idea actually helpful? Does it do anything? Or is it just something that doesn't matter at all? And here I want to highlight again that the carbon dioxide is only one point of view to look at it. There are measures that you can develop just for reducing your carbon dioxide. But there are also measures that you can develop to raise awareness, to talk about it, to spread the word. And that's actually not always measurable, but very, very important. So, so always have that in mind, that talking about carbon dioxide is maybe the starting point, but there is a lot more to it. And you should also have that in mind when you look at the ideas you've come up with. So also when you try to evaluate your ideas and to pick ideas, also have in mind what is actually manageable for us. What is something that we can start doing now? Because we don't need more money. It's just about changing our behavior. We can just talk about it and get started now. Also think about the urgency. What is most important for us? Where is something that we really need to do? If, for example, you're located near by a river and there's always flooding in summer, then maybe that might be one very urgent factor for you to think about how to come up with some protection measures. Also think about the visibility. What is something where you can inspire your audience in actually your productions or on your website? Where can you talk to partners about it, like in this project, but also beyond that? The point of effectiveness is the point of carbon dioxide. So there are different criteria you can use. I just want to let you know that the carbon dioxide is not the one leading criteria. So the most important thing is that you find measures that suit your theater, that you are willing to do, that you're motivated to do, and that don't leave you frustrated. And you can try things. It's rather a trial and error. There is no perfect or correct way. The perfect or the most important thing is that you get started. So in order to help you find the right measure for your theater, there's something which has a very unsexy name, which is called the materiality analysis. And I'm not even sure I can pronounce it correctly in English. It's basically about what matters to do and how you can find out what matters. And you can see here the graph, and it says on the left effectiveness. That means effectiveness in terms of reducing your carbon dioxide emissions. And then here below you have the visibility. So what is very visible from these measures? So the measures I've come up with in terms of communication, using here as an example, promoting whatever you're doing in terms of sustainability on your website has probably no difference or causes no difference on your carbon dioxide, but it is super visible and therefore very helpful to communicate whatever you're doing and to raise awareness. At the same time, when you decide to use e-ticketing, there might be the chance that you already reduce your emissions because you print less and you have, let's say, a medium visibility because you can also use that in your marketing and your audience will realize. So you can use this, and that's just an idea on how to get started. You can use this to find your way and to define if you want to do some of these very visible measures or rather effective measures. So it's basically a tool to help you decide on what to do and also to help you argue why you're doing these measures, especially when they are not very effective in terms of reducing your footprint. And that is where I'm now coming to an end. Also, looking at the time, what is most important is mix it. As I said, it's important for you to get started. It's important for you to find measures that you're motivated to try. Be creative and just try and find out if they suit you, if they are effective, if they work for you. And that can be a combination of measures that are very small or measures that are very short time oriented. So if, for example, if you plant a tree today, that will only be helpful on the long term. But if the street your theater is in is being renovated and you talk to the city council to maybe put more parking lots for bicycles, that can be something which is rather expensive, but something that is visible, and also the expenses are in cooperation maybe with the city. So you see here different like a range of different measures, and it's important for you to find a mix and to just get started and try. And maybe then there is a measure that is super boring, like changing your heating. It's very boring, it's not visible, but it's super effective. But if you start a production in your theater to talk about a climate crisis, that might be super inspiring and super visible. So I think I've made my point clear. I hope so, at least. So find your own mix and get started. And then it's actually, and that's where I stop talking finally, that's actually a process. And you should always be aware that there is no right or wrong, that it's rather a trial and error, and that for you to be in the process, it's just very important to start it, because you will learn throughout the process. And therefore, it's 2 points are very important, which is your success. Whenever you're successful, celebrate your successes. Be aware that you've managed to do something, that there's also the self-empowerment of, wow, it's only a small thing, but we've already managed to do a small thing, so now we can move on to the next one. And the second part is also be transparent and write down whatever you decide, whatever you do, so that you can also evaluate whatever you're doing, whatever measure you're implementing, so that on the long term you can see, oh, 2 years ago we've planted the tree, or we've changed the heating, and from then on this happened, so maybe we can continue this path. So that's just very important. Be transparent, maybe write down whatever you're doing and deciding, and also try to look at your own handprint and be proud of whatever small step you've managed to do. And and I think now it's time for Pippi Longstocking to take over. I'm not sure if she's named like that in English, but she says, I've never tried that before, so I think I should definitely be able to do that. And that's what I want to leave you with now. Just get started, don't be afraid, try and be creative, and talk about it with your partners here, and see whatever comes up to your mind might also be valuable for the others. And yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you very much. So Marje, I think you have to leave right now. Am I right? Or do you have still a few minutes?
We can still have maybe 5 minutes for questions.
That's great. Could you maybe stop sharing your presentation so we can see each other again?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So guys, we have 5 minutes tops left for our expert. Do you have any questions, understanding concerning the content?
Maybe I have a question, if it's okay for you, Marie. Thank you very much. I really liked your presentation. For me, it seemed that really what you said matches about the words. The description matches with the LeCake project. The concept, or the way the different ideas were structured really matches with what we would like to develop. So I will move to a more emotional question, maybe from you, an answer from you about it, is how to really, how to put it, how to really believe that it's an emergency. What I feel from myself and from a lot of people I work with is that we intellectually really understand what is at stake, but it's like we don't exactly feel it inside as an emergency, as a absolute need to get into action. So sorry for those that already used heard my comparison, but we are like a collective of alcoholics, anonymous, anonymous alcoholics, and we are doing this project all together because we need the support of each other to really take into action and to really behave. But I would like to know maybe how, from your point of view, how you found the necessity, the inner necessity to behave, and maybe you could share it with us.
Well, that's a complex question. I could talk about it for a while. I think, of course, I think it's in our human nature that we only feel a necessity to do something if it's really in front of us, if we can feel it. So if you're confronted by the heat in the summer, or if there is a flood next to your door, then you finally start doing something. And I think that's something very natural, that whenever it's far away and we cannot really measure what we're doing and that it actually has an impact, it rather leaves us maybe even a bit ignorant, but also a bit, it just doesn't really matter. And I think it's a very common thing. And that's why, I'm not sure if I have a very helpful answer, but I think that's where it helps you to get find your partners. You've already found your partners, you've said so, that it's helpful, and to find your understanding that you're doing something even if you don't feel it right now. But that's also why it's so helpful, or so important for you to find to start something where you can directly feel the change. That's why I would recommend you starting with the low-hanging fruits. Do something very small where you can immediately see, oh, that works. Even because that gives you that kind of self-empowerment, that gives you the feeling of, oh, I can actually do something and it's actually valuable. And from that, you can take one step, like step by step. That's maybe not really answering your question, but maybe something where you could just get into the flow, and maybe then you can also, the more you talk about it, I feel the more urgent it gets to you, because you hear about what people are doing. And of course, in the cultural sector, we are far away. Of course, we can always blame the industry and the economy, saying, well, we are not the biggest problem in here. But I think that's where we can just use whatever we have to say. We can use our artistic and cultural words to inspire. And that's something you're doing anyway. So why don't you just connect the two of them, and then you're already getting there. Maybe for now that helps.
I have a short question to Marje, but also to all of us, maybe also for the ongoing process. I have the feeling that we also have to know more about the quick lanes in a way. So the low-hanging fruits, I understand as a motivation and so on. But if we really want to do big steps and quick changes and effective changes, we also have to know, I don't know if you have these in IKEA, where you can just shorten the way and you go directly from the bath to the kitchen things, and don't have to see all the things about the lights and so on. So we also need these information and this knowledge about technical renovation and where are the big investments and so on, because the low-hanging fruits are good for our consciousness or whatever, but not really changing in a way. So it's really something about knowledge and quick lanes, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that is you need a lot of knowledge, and that's the difficulty also in the fields of actions, because most of them are not related to our proper cultural work, but are rather on the technical side, as you said. So I cannot there are, of course, quick lanes. Very often there are not, because it is a very, very long process. But I think that's also important for you to talk about whoever you talk to. So if you, for example, if you're organizing an event, no, I think now that leads in a different direction, but it is, yeah, connecting with partners, connecting with other theaters, also with bigger ones who've already maybe are a lot further along the process is very important. And I think that's actually, even though if it might not seem very helpful now, but you have to start talking also to people that are not from the cultural and artistic sector, because that's where this very special knowledge is. And maybe afterwards I can send you some links on where you also find more information on these partners that might be valuable for you. Yeah, and maybe I can come back to that topic also later. I really need to go now, unfortunately, but I'd also like to offer that whenever you still have further questions now afterwards, also after sending you my presentation, you find my email address, or you can also maybe send your questions to Rosanna, and then I'd be happy to also provide some more detailed answers. And yeah, that's maybe from for now everything I can say today. But I hope that yeah, I could give you some new input on how to look at the IPCC and all the other important climate goals.
Yes, thank you very much, Marje, and good luck for your next meeting. It was nice of you to participate today and present your ideas on the IPCC and climate action. So have a nice day and goodbye.
Thank you. Good luck to you. Bye.
So guys, we still have a few minutes left, and we just can let this input sink in together. And I just wanted to ask if anybody of you has some more ideas on the question Georg just raised. So do you also have the need in your institutions to work on those quick lines and on big changes? And can you understand me correctly? Because all the churches in my neighborhood are ringing at this moment together. Okay, now you say it's okay. So what about those quick lines we need?
What exactly, can you maybe rephrase that question a bit? What would you like to discuss about these, I don't know, shortcuts or fast lanes?
Maybe Georg can just ask this question again to the group.
I'm really in this conflict of how to bring a broad public with us on this way and really take everybody with me, or is it better to use bigger steps, bigger investments, or however, to really in a way change something? And yeah, thanks for the correct word, fast lane. It's not quick lane, Tim. It's always you that that's a better English. Yeah, I'm just it was just an open question for me in a way, not really a decision I will do today or whatever.
Yeah, maybe I often feel that with these processes where you need to basically update some convictions or some general lifestyles, and especially if you want to do this in a sort of, let's say, democratic way, or not a way where you just force people to change and like put that on top of them. I'm afraid that these processes take some time. Maybe there is no fast lane. Maybe then it just takes longer. That's maybe one sort of rather negative answer that I would propose. And another one would be maybe that I think, which is kind of like a buzzword at the moment as well, right? Narrative, but that you kind of find a nice story where people would feel motivated and sign onto, where they that idea of like a collective aim gives them the motivation to do something and hop along, and it kind of feels like it's this drive to do something in a different way comes from within them because they got inspired by the story. And then of course what would be that story exactly, but somehow to propose a way where you don't say, okay, we're doing this now and this is for this and this and like lots of things at the same time, but somehow maybe somehow this motivational narrative somehow thing. It's a bit fuzzy, I admit, but maybe that would be something that I could propose.
Just to add, I really think that we already know which are those fast lines we have to take. So for example, we know that we need to work on our energy consumption. We know that mobility is one of the three biggest things we have to work on. And I really think it's important to be impatient in the end. So I'm all about the narrative, Tim, but for me, we're talking too much about the narrative. And we know which measures have the biggest impact. The knowledge is there. And so I think that Marje actually did a very important point that we have to connect these experts to different kind of sectors. So for example, that culture gets the connection to a solar expert or something. I think those connections right now are very, very important for the ecological transition, in my opinion. Because the knowledge is there, but we can't expect from every cultural institution to be now solar experts.
Maybe then also I confused two things. So it sounded in the end that Georg wanted to kind of also get all the public on board, like all the audiences. And I think that's maybe something different than if you have to check how to improve the energy consumption or the CO2 footprint energy-wise of your theater, of the actual infrastructure, or how you want to get the public on board to, or the audiences on board for new ideas. So I don't know, but because for example, infrastructure, energy, how to say, like where you get your energy from, I don't know who actually would be in charge of that in an institution like your theater in Gelsenkirchen. But I guess that person who's in charge maybe can try to firstly go to, I don't know, if you can choose your own electricity provider, for example. Or if you can decide yourselves, we're gonna install like solar panels, and then for example, at Le Sas, oftentimes it's kind of down to that one person who just says, okay, let's just do it. Let's one person just starts building this thing, and then it's kind of like one person will kind of drag along the other people to actually realize a project. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I think this is the reality at the Consol theater at the moment. The one person has to take the first step.
Yeah, but to take another example, maybe if we look on these small villages around Rieti, we all got in touch with, it might be quite easy to set them up CO2 neutral and give them energy which is sustainable and. But how important is it to take all the inhabitants of these villages with this idea and to have them in mind that they are really developing future ideas about sustainability and setting an example? And because it might be quite easy to do that on this effective thing, but on this knowledge thing and on this development of the population as well, I don't know, do we really need that? Or is it just an effect of investment and renovation and whatever? So it's probably both, but yeah, that's... Because we divide the whole world in small villages, so it might be quite easy to work one after another, and in 10 years we are done. Why not?
Yeah, I think there is maybe also this dilemma of the consumer. Maybe if you want to convince people that they should use equipment that consumes less energy, for example, but then when you need to go and buy, I don't know, a new water kettle or whatever, like just household electronics, and you can check maybe what's the energy efficiency rating or something, but sometimes you would just not be able to find a product that's offered nearby where you live that is very energy efficient, or it's just so much more expensive that you can't afford it, or that it doesn't really work out for you. I think there's also this kind of divide where people say, okay, it's a free market, and then the consumers will be able to choose themselves freely to pick the best products that will save most energy and so on. But in a way, we, as a consumer, we don't really have that that power so much, because we can only choose from the products and from the range of products that's offered at the shops that are close to us, right? And I mean, maybe there is a more energy efficient product, but I would need to go to Sweden to buy it or something, and that makes no sense either, right? And so I think there's a similar and maybe to finish on that thought, I guess one way that I would see to improve on that would be to have more rules, basically, or political decisions where you say, okay, you just cannot, as a manufacturer, produce products that have a lower energy efficiency class than whatsoever. And or if you do so, you will need to pay basically an extra fee, and then maybe do have these mechanisms, right? But it's like it doesn't seem really feasible to let this question or this problem to be solved by the consumers. And I think maybe in a similar way, what you asked, Georg, is it's not maybe needed or very realistic to expect that we can educate and everyone in the communities and get on board with us. And maybe it's not even needed. Maybe for these big questions like where does the energy for the village come from, or even for like a whole district, and even so it could be electricity, could be also just warm water and stuff. Maybe that's just some decisions that need to be taken on a higher level by fewer people who are maybe in this infrastructure management part of the city administration. And then I guess most people won't really care too much where the energy comes from, as long as it doesn't get much more expensive, right? So, but I feel like there are some points maybe where fairly few people could kind of maybe do these decisions to go towards different ways of doing things that will affect most people, and then in the end they will not really care too much, I guess. Another thing would be maybe if you have new ways of or renewable energy production ways, like using wind turbines or so, which are very visible. So I think there are some cases in the north of Germany, for example, where there was a whole village where they tried to agree amongst really all of the villages that they will install like 3 wind turbines or something like that. And what's quite interesting, because most of the people, they were kind of against it in the beginning, and then they tried to really come up with a compromise within them. And they also had this incentive that if they install these wind turbines, then the company that actually sells the energy coming from them, they're also obliged to invest, I think, something like 50,000 euros or give that back to the community every year. So they had this monetary incentive. But they're really on the scales there. So it was like, I don't know, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people living in this village. They really tried to discuss that and come up with this common compromise or agreement before installing this new type of energy or electricity generator that was very visible. It had a visible impact on the daily life. But maybe for other things where you just care if you get the electricity when you plug your device into the wall socket, then you don't really care too much where it exactly comes from. In particular, I don't know, maybe in Gelsenkirchen it's the same way, but here in Paris and around, typically the cityscape is not that beautiful to begin with. So if there's like a new type of, I don't know, solar panels being installed or whatever, you barely will notice that, and it doesn't really make a difference like that for like to the beauty of the surroundings. I know. So yeah.
Okay, just sorry that I have to interrupt a little bit this discussion because it's already 10:06 and you all have other meetings to attend to. So just going to quickly shorten the little evaluation game we have prepared. So I would like everybody of you to just turn your camera on. And then I'm going to ask a question. So and when everybody has camera on, you just put your hand in front of your camera. And when the answer to the question I'm going to ask is positive, you just take your hand back, and then we can see how what everybody is thinking about the little session. So everybody puts their hand in front of the camera. So the first question, who found the length of the expert input appropriate? So was it too long or too short? And if it was fine for you, then put your hand away. Okay,
repeat.
great.
I lost my connection. So can you repeat?
Okay. When you're fine with the duration of our experts' input, then you just put your hand away. And I'm just going to ask the next question. When you're positive, then you just free your camera again. So once again, who of you found the input today empowering? Then you just leave your hand. Okay, so this is 6. Okay, I'm just going to tell this to Marje. And then one round again. Who of you has a concrete idea of what you could do for climate protection in your institution in the next week after this expert's input? Okay, not bad. And last but not least, after this whole module, do you think you have a good overview of the IPCC? Well, I'm happy to leave you with this. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for being so active. And I'm happy to see you next week, I think, Nicola, for the Climate Press.
Yeah, July 4th, we have this workshop online. It's a 3-hour workshop where I encourage you to join because it's important for the next chapter by Shift project. So please register if you didn't. Okay, you have all the links, I guess.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you very much.